much. Okay, last month we were talking about backup and restore, and we had gone through it. So I'm going to try and get us back to where I think we left off at. And we talked about who needed to do backups, and that's basically because if you have data that you want to keep, now if you don't want to keep it, it doesn't matter, but if you have data that you want to keep, you want to make sure you do backups. And that could be anything from documents you create, movies, music, whatever you have on your computer that you want to keep that's valuable to you. For example, if you buy software, you just download it directly to the computer rather than have it installed from a CD that you may have, you're going to need to be able to back that stuff up so that if you ever have to reinstall it, you can. And of course, we know there's different things that can create reasons why you need to have backups so that you can avoid catastrophes, things like natural things like fires, floods, earthquakes, those sort of things. And then you also have the unnatural catastrophes that I talked about, like theft by thieves, kids, pets, or something silly like spilling water on your computer and shorting the whole shooting match out. Two types of backups. Remember, we have both manual ones that you do that require your actions, your interventions to make those backups work. And then you have automatic backups, which are done by having software running in the background that's constantly backing up your computer for you. You can always back, when you do a manual backup, you have choices of putting it to like an external hard drive, or you can copy it to a drive on your own home network you may have. You may have a small NAS system there where you can back them up as well. The drawbacks, of course, to doing manual backups is that you have to remember to do them. It requires a lot of discipline, and you need to store that backup that you do in a secure location. And of course, you can back up on almost anything depending on how much data you have. If you have small amounts, you can put on DVDs and use it as a backup. You can use USB drives. You can use SanDisk to back them up, depending on how much data you got. You can get a USB drive almost up to 128 gig now. So if all your data will fit on one of those, you stick it in a USB port, you do a Finder copy, you put it all on there, close it, put it somewhere secure, your backup's done. Cheap, easy to do, but the important thing is make sure you do it. And then of course you can do it on tape, and my favorite, I'd love to do it on external hard drives. I use a lot of those to back up with. Then after you do those backups, make sure you put them in a secure location. If you have a safe at home that's fire resistant, that's a great place to put them at. If you have a safe somewhere else, or take it to your safe deposit box, take it to a neighbor's house, take it to a family friend, take it to work if you're okay with that, lock it in your desk. Just put your backup in a secure location. Now, automatic backup is the other choice you can do rather than do a manual backup. And I do both, to be honest with you. But automatic backup would be to do something like have a service like Mozy or Carbonite or CrashPlan, some of the online backup services where you load their software onto your computer and then they back it up for a regular basis for you as long as you're connected to the internet. And they'll copy it. You can either copy it to another drive on another computer on your network or somewhere else. For example, with CrashPlan, I have the ability to pick out a computer over at my brother's house, and I can have backups go over there if I want them to go. Or you can back them up to the cloud, and it requires much less discipline because you've got a computer doing your work for you and remembering, oh, I have to go back this up on a regular basis, rather than just leaving it to chance and saying, oh, did I back up the other day or what? So, and then the other thing that you get with using an online backup service is it's automatically stored somewhere off-site and in a secure location. And all of them, when they back your data up, they encrypt it before they transmit it over to the internet. So it's encrypted for your protection and take care of that as well. Clone backups. Now, clone backups are when you take an external hard drive and software, either SuperDuper or Carbon Copy Cloner, two to mention. They're both, well, SuperDuper is still free. Carbon Copy Cloner you have to pay for. But either one of them are two great software packages that I've used in the past. And when you clone it, you take an external hard drive that is at least the same size as the one that's in your computer that you're backing up. And the software, and what it does is it copies exactly just what that computer has in it onto that external hard drive. In addition to that, it makes the hard drive, or can make the hard drive, bootable. So the benefit for doing that is that you'll be able to have a hard drive failure internal to the computer. You could stick that USB drive into the port and tell the computer by holding down the Option key, I want you to boot to that external drive. It comes back up and you can continue to work. The other benefit that has nothing to do with backup, but is good to know about, is that if you do that sort of backup, now you have what your computer looks and acts like on an external source. All of a sudden you say, you know something, I want to upgrade to El Capitan. So now you can take and apply the upgrade to the external backup drive, and then boot that drive up and see if all your stuff still works. If it ends up being not El Capitan, but El Crapitan, then at least all you have to do is unplug the drive and everything goes back to its original configuration on your computer because you never changed it. You also always want to back up your computer anytime you do an upgrade of anything like that for that very reason, because if it all goes skunked, nothing's worse than sitting there all day long trying to put everything back together when all you had to do was just unplug and you're back to where you were before. So that's the benefit of a clone backup. Fast. The last way you can back up things is by doing what you call a disk image. This is the cheapest and easiest way to do it. So if you don't want to spend money on anything other than the hard drive itself, disk image is the best way to back up. And you can use the Mac, in disk utility of Mac OS 10, you can go into that and create that clone image right inside of disk utility. Easy to do, takes a little bit of time, and once it's all done, you'll have it all backed up that way. Now, unfortunately, the only drawback to that is when you want to restore, let's say from a complete failure and you did a disk image backup, you have to get your new computer, put the operating system on it first, and then restore the disk image on top of that.
Does it create a bootable disk?
Disk image is not a bootable drive. That is just a, quote, image of the drive. It's like, it basically is just one big whomping file. All right, so the tools that you need to do a manual backup, depending on which way you want to do it, you can use a USB flash drive, you can use an external hard drive, you can use a network attached hard drive, and you'll need some sort of third-party software, or use the Finder or disk utility to back it up. And one other thing you want to do is you want to encrypt your backups if you're going to store them somewhere out of your control. And within Mac OS 10, in the security and privacy panel, in the preference panel, you can use something called File Vault. And you use File Vault to encrypt that drive. Caveat, be careful. Once you encrypt with File Vault and you forget the password or the key, the drive is skunk. There's nothing you can do to recover from it. It's lost, it's done, you just wipe it and use it over again. So be careful if you do in fact use it. And then of course, always make sure you find a secure location to store that backup that you manually did. Tools for automatic backup. Well, you'll need a service, either like CrashPan or Mozy or Carbonite or any of the ones that are out there. You'll need to have a high-speed internet connection. You can't do it over dial-up. You'll be probably buried for about 10,000 years by the time it backs up a gig. So you definitely want to make sure you have a high-speed connection if you're going to use an online backup service.
How many megabytes a second would you refer to as high speed?
You know, I never even really thought about that, but I figure anything that's offered either by Comcast or UVerse ought to be sufficient.
Okay, so my parents have UVerse, and they signed up for the senior citizen budget plan. So they're at 3 megabits per second, which is just a step above dial-up speed, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Anything under 20 is slow to me. Now,
At least 10.
I would think a minimum 10 or 12
Yeah.
would be good. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, that should be sufficient.
Okay.
I would think that.
Thank you.
So yeah, he asked a good question because I never thought about the budget or the low budget solutions that people may be using for internet because I hadn't thought about it. But yeah, you want to have at least that type of throughput with it when you do that. The software that you will need to do that will be provided by that service provider. So when you apply for their service and then download their software, it installs on the machine and that'll do all the work for you. It'll set up, you can change the scheduling if you like, or you can just set it up and let it run with the defaults that they offer. The offsite storage is provided by them. They take care of making sure that's backed up and held somewhere secure. And they also provide for the encryption as well because their software will encrypt it as it goes across the net. Now, all said and done, you got everything backed up. That's hunky-dory. It's wonderful. You're happy. You feel secure. It's nice and safe. Everything's doing just ducky. But if you can't restore a backup, it's not a backup. So you have to always remember to periodically try a restore and make sure you can restore some of your files. If you got the time, make sure you can restore all your files. Because a backup you can't restore is not a backup. So test them periodically, check them out, and make sure they're working for you. Yes, ma'am.
I know Crash Plan took about a month or more to back up my entire hard drive. Do those other plans take just as long?
Yes. From what I've heard so far, the Mosey, the Carbonites, and Crash Plan, all of them are just about the same way because it just takes time to get that data down there. So that's the other thing, a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. When you subscribe to these services and you start up the backup, and let's say you got a 500 gig hard drive and it's 3/4 full, and you start the backup up and you walk away and go have dinner, stuff like that, and you come back later on and you go like, it's only like got less than 1% done so far. And I'm on an internet connection. And it's a decent one. I got 20 megabits of speed. And why is it taking so long? It takes a while to pull all that data across the wire because it's got to read it, encrypt it, transmit it, write it at the other end, the whole shoot match. When I first, I have an iMac that has a 600 and some odd gig hard drive on it, 3/4 full. And it took roughly about 3.5 weeks for them to get a full backup. Now, they do a couple of things when they're doing that backup. Number one, when your machine is idle, it's backing up at full speed. But if you're sitting there working, it takes a back seat, slows down so it doesn't interfere with you as much, and backs up at a slower rate. So when you do subscribe to the service, it's a good idea to leave that machine on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, until that full backup gets done. Then once it's done, then you don't have to worry about, leaving it on all the time. Anytime you turn it on, it'll do backups of only things that have changed since the last backup. Yes, sir.
Yeah, two things. One of the advantages of image backups to an external hard drive is it goes really quick. And hour later, done. Sometimes as little as 30 minutes.
Yep. Depending on how big the drive is.
And the other thing is that a lot of imaging software allows you to boot off a thumb drive. And so then if your hard drive dies, you put the new blank hard drive in, you boot off the thumb drive, and then you can bring your data back that way.
So there's different choices out there. Thanks. And if to be helpful, if you could, on the BBS, you might want to put out the name of that software that offers that type of ability to do that so that other people can draw information from that if you could.
The one I'm talking about is the Cronus True Image. And it traditionally has been a Windows product, and now they support Mac. I will double check to make sure that thumb drive capability is available on the Mac, and if it is, then I will put it in.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Restoring from backup. Now, manual backups can be restored after you've restored the operating system on the computer, because it's a backup in itself, but you need the operating system in order to pull all that information back. So you can do that. But remember, it's only going to come back as fast as the medium that's transporting it back and forth. So if you're going to do it on an external drive, I always suggest that you get at least a USB 3.0 drive or better for backup, so that when you back it up and when you restore it, it can go as fast as it possibly can. If you've got the extra money, and your machine's equipped for it, get a Thunderbolt drive, and it'll run even faster. So that's the best way to do that. And automatic backups are restored after the OS is installed as well. So, for example, if I had a problem with this machine right now and got another machine, then I would have the operating system installed on it, and then I would install Crash Plan back on it again, and then I'd be able to pull my data back down onto the computer. Yes, sir.
You said that Thunderbolt is faster, but wouldn't that also depend on the speed of the drive that's in your Thunderbolt enclosure?
No,
No?
actually, no. The Thunderbolt technology, whether it's a 5400 RPM drive or a 7200 RPM drive, is shoving so much stuff to it so fast that there is an advantage to having the 7200 RPM drive. But Thunderbolt really screams if you're on solid state, and there's no RPMs on that. So Thunderbolt technology is fantastic. USB is one thing, USB 2 is better, FireWire is wonderful, USB 3 is better than FireWire, Thunderbolt is better than USB 3. So if you have a Thunderbolt capable machine and you can afford a Thunderbolt external hard drive, you will be a very happy individual because it moves data so quick. Also, I've seen people move 200 gigs worth of data from one machine to another one using Migration Assistant via the Thunderbolt. I would say it took probably an hour to move everything. Applications, user accounts, all that data, which is incredibly fast. If you hooked it up via, say, Ethernet, how most people did it before, or even FireWire, you're probably 4 hours. So yeah, Thunderbolt is a really, really wonderful thing if you need that kind of speed. If you do not need that kind of speed, USB 3 is a great option because it's affordable. Thank you.
I love the luxury of having a technical support person right next to me. Yes, ma'am.
The Apple backup thing, what's that called again?
Time machine.
Time machine.
Yeah, Time Machine. You know what, I was trying to open up something that was on Time Machine and I didn't know how to do it. How do you do it? You know what I'm saying?
I want to yield back to our Apple person.
So when you have the Time Machine drive plugged in, if you double click on it, you will see a folder called backups.backups. If you double click on that folder, you will see typically Macintosh HD. If you double click on that folder, that's like opening the hard drive on your computer. You can go down to the user's account, find your account, double click on that, and you can open it up. Now, once you've gone to Macintosh HD, it will give you a list of times. It'll show a bunch of folders with different times. So if you're looking for something that you knew you had on the computer in July, my suggestion is find one of the July folders, double click, open it up, go to users, go to your user account, say go into documents, find your document, and then you can click in the bottom left-hand corner, restore. And that file will restore to your computer, just that file, and bring it all back. If you were to click on the user account and hit restore, it would bring the entire user account back on, should you have deleted it. We don't really recommend digging in to pull the files out manually, but if you do it that way and choose restore, you will find that one file or multiple files to bring back over. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I didn't realize they didn't restore. I couldn't figure that out.
That was the stopping point. That's all. Now you got it.
If you use the time machine animation, which is right there on your menu bar,
Mhm.
just go enter time machine,
right?
and it all comes up, you go this way. It's a lot easier to
It
do
is.
that way than your way.
Right, well, some people want to do it the hard way, and some people want to do it the easy way. So you're correct, if you open up the time machine program and you get that calendar along the right-hand side, then you can pick that date and you can dig back in.
It wouldn't let me in there.
It should have. If not, then the way I described it to you would get you back to it, but then you are manually moving the data over. His description with the animation should allow you to get the file and put it back through the software that way. So he's correct about that, definitely.
I'll entertain one more.
You said you don't recommend restoring a single file?
I don't recommend digging into your time machine and manually moving things.
No,
Because,
I meant just to look at it. You're doing something currently, you say, I want to know what that looked like a year ago. Maybe
okay,
it's a presentation.
so then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So you would click on it to see it. You don't necessarily have to restore it, you just want to view it
Right,
and correct the current copy.
yeah, if you're just for a comparison kind of thing.
Yeah,
So the way he was describing it,
that's how I would.
it's gonna get you to that document, you hit the space bar and it'll give you a preview and you can take a quick read of it. But if you're trying to do a side by side, then it's a case of what I was describing, of opening the drive, drilling down to the appropriate folder, finding it. Then again, you can click it once, hit the space bar, it'll give you a preview next to your open document that you already have, if you want to do it that way.
But if you hit restore, it won't replace your current document,
No, it'll bring that one on.
bring it up.
Okay, back to Kelvin.
All right. Clone backups are another way that you can restore your files as well. And frankly, it is my favorite way of restoring files because it's fast. If I had to restore an entire drive back onto a machine, you hook up that drive to it, you boot directly to that drive, and then you take Super Duper or Carbon Copy and say, take everything that's on this drive here and put it over here and make it bootable. Click, go have dinner, come back later. It's all done. You reboot the machine and life is good again. And then from that point, what I normally do is a combination of two. I do the online backups and I do a clone backup. And the reason why I do both of them is this. I want to be able to restore from a total failure fast. And where before, and I just found out today when I was doing some research, I could call CrashPlan and say, I want to do what they call a restore to door restoration. And basically what they would do is they go out on their servers, copy all my files, put it onto a hard drive and FedEx it to me for a price, of course. They don't do that anymore. So what I was doing anyway, because I wanted to save that price, I do a clone backup of my machine at least quarterly, if not more often. I'd store that off at a safe location. And then if I had a total loss of the machine, I'd go get that drive, get my new computer, clone it back over, connect to CrashPlan and say, restore back everything from this date to this date, puts it on my machine, probably only take maybe a couple of hours, I'm back in business again. So clone backups are really great for that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Terry White used to say that he would do a clone like you're saying, and then if he was ready to do a presentation and the hard drive quit working, he could plug in the external hard drive and boot off of that.
Exactly. You definitely
And
could.
so, he would be back in business in 0 minutes and 0 seconds.
Pretty much. Mr. Stone?
Yeah, didn't you just say it took 3.5 weeks to back it up?
That is, yeah, to back up everything.
Yeah, okay.
But
But then it's gonna take an hour
because what I'm,
over the wire,
because,
crash plan.
yeah, because what I'm doing is I put everything back onto my machine at a point in time, let's say from December. And then what I'm doing from CrashPlan is I'm only pulling the files that were backed up there from that December time point to today. So it may be a very small amount. It may only be 2 or 3 gig. The difference would make up the total amount. And of course, there's 2 types of candidates for backups, those who need to do it and those who wish they did it. And so which one are you? And you can figure that out for yourself. Any questions other than what we've already answered? There is a hand. Yes, sir.
Back on the restore for the time machine, it restores it, the file to your desktop?
I'm sorry?
When you do a restore with Time Machine,
For a file, just a single.
Yeah, you're just looking for one file?
do you tell it, does it give you the option to tell it where to put that restore back to?
I believe. Right, so if it was in your documents folder, it goes back in the documents folder. If it was on your desktop, it should go back on the desktop.
Does it overlay the one that may be sitting there already?
If you ask it to.
It asks you if you want to override it. You can tell it to either override it or keep both.
Right. Okay.
And then part 2 of that question would be, it doesn't remove it from the backup. It's
No.
just copying it.
No, it's
So it'll
just
say
giving you a
restore,
copy.
replace, or just,
Yes.
Yep.
just
It'll
restore.
ask if you want to keep the original or.
So then you could keep, if
Yes.
you kept the original, you could open them up both side by side.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And that is the same thing that happens with the online backups. If you go out and say, I want to do a restore of some files, one of the things it's going to ask you is, do you want to put it back in the original location or do you want to put it somewhere else? And you can tell it, well, put it over here in this folder called I'm restoring files, and it'll dump it over there.
If I could say something about the time machine or ask something about it, if you could tell us, Dave, something about it, how it works. I mean, does it save all the data from all the times it saves? What are we looking at? What does it do?
What you tell
May
us.
I, or-
Sure.
I mean, it goes back like months, right?
It goes back years.
And it saves all that?
Right, so let's say you have 1,000 terabyte hard drive for your backup. Your computer is a 500 gig hard drive. It will keep making backups from your system of new things. Every time it says, okay, there's enough new things, let's make a backup, if the drive is always plugged in. If it's not always plugged in, you have to plug it in, and then you can either force it to start a backup right then and there, or it will pick up usually within an hour. It backs up everything that you've had. You delete 40 gigs of photos off your computer today, okay? It's already backed up on Time Machine. That 40 gigs is off. You take enough pictures where you fill up another 40 gigs. Your original backup is on the hard drive. The next 40 gigs, you plug in the drive, it backs that up too, then you delete it off the computer. So you've got both of those things living on that drive until the drive fills up.
Then it works like a waterfall.
Yeah, and then when you get to the point where that external drive for Time Machine is too full, you're running out of space, it asks you, would you like to delete some of your older backups, or would you like to start a new Time Machine hard drive? So it gives you a yes or a no. So it will go until it gets full, but it'll warn you, which is really good. I know Terry said he would get it where it was full, and then he would take that drive and archive it on the shelf and hook up a new hard drive and start a new fresh one. So that way he had everything there. I've talked to a number of people who they slap a sticker on that hard drive and they write the date on it when they started it, and then they write the date on it when they did their last backup. Then they put the new hard drive in. Now, the new hard drive is going to start fresh with everything that you have on your system again. It's not going to pick up where the other one left off. It'll start up fresh. It will ask you, do you want to continue to use this up to your old drive and this drive? And you can say yes or no. That's a decision you get to make. But yeah, it keeps everything that you've had, and you throw things away and you plug the drive back in, it's not going to throw away off the Time Machine drive what you've deleted off the computer. It's going to keep it there until that drive gets full, which is the beauty, I think, behind using Time Machine, because you've got everything saved. So,
Go ahead.
How long will data stay on that drive that you placed on the shelf without becoming contaminated if you don't do anything to it?
Well, that would be a mechanical issue.
Okay.
So if you bought a quality drive to begin with, and the drive doesn't fall off the shelf and bounce on the floor, you're probably going to be good until the next time you plug it in.
Or
But, yes.
you could spend money and get an SSD drive and put it on the shelf, and the mechanics don't even come into play.
Right.
But isn't there a thing about having to play it every so often to keep it from transferring?
Right, so manual hard drives, your typical mechanical drive. I always describe it as, think of a turntable. Platter spins, arm reads it. That's really basic for how a hard drive works. The catch is, on a hard drive in your computer or an external hard drive, if it's a mechanical hard drive, there is a gel that allows it to spin. Over time, that gel will turn to oil. And so it doesn't spin at the right speed anymore. When it doesn't spin at the right speed anymore, it doesn't read, it won't mount up on the computer. There are tricks to getting drives to come back to life temporarily. Yep. So one way of doing it is take the drive, wrap it in a towel, throw it in the freezer overnight. Then take the drive out the next morning, put it in your sled, copy all the data that it'll let you copy, and you're good to go. I heard of a new one yesterday where somebody does the same thing, but they use dry ice. And they just put it in a styrofoam cooler, wrap the towel around it, top it into the dry ice, because it gets it even colder, which turns that oil into a gel faster. And so instead of waiting overnight, this guy's saying, oh yeah, 2 hours, and I'm pulling the drive out and I'm copying stuff off all I can. Because once that happens, that drive's toast. Keep your stuff off of it, and then when you're done with it, you're done with it. That drive is useless at that point in time. So that's the difference between mechanical and solid state drive. Solid state drive is a chip. The disadvantage of solid state drives is if it fries, you're done. There is no getting anything back from it. With a mechanical drive, should you not be able to get the data off of it yourself, there is a company called Drive Savers, and I've actually used this company. They're expensive. It starts at $1,200. I sent them a drive from our former business, 80 gig hard drive, that bellied up on us on a Thursday afternoon. Found them, called them, sent it off. We got the drive back on Tuesday with an external hard drive, because what they do is they disassemble that hard drive, pull the platters out, put it in a new mechanism, and copy everything over. They got stuff that we threw away and deleted 6 months prior. So if you're ever concerned about how long does data live on your drive, it lives a long time. So there are companies that will help you get that stuff back. We spent $1,800, but it was a business expense. But it just depends. How important is your data work? I have people come in all the time with a dead hard drive. I've got pictures of my grandma on there that no one else has. I've got to have them. Well, how important are they? Because there are companies that'll get it for you. But if you're not making that backup, if that's the only place grandma's picture is, that's on you. That's not on anybody else but you. So if you're not backing your stuff up, get a mirror, because that's the person who you get to blame. So that's it. Let's.
Cal, when you were talking, the last comment that you made, could you repeat? In regards to how to save the hard drive, what?
I'm sorry, say it again, please.
Yeah, when he was asking you the question about how to store it, were you talking about whether it's vertical or horizontal? Because I didn't understand what your answer was at all.
No, I think the last comment that I made with Dave was about whether to use an with you?
Yeah, you said use an SSD instead of a.
Yeah, use an SSD drive instead of a mechanical drive was the last comment I said. But, Mr. Stone, did you have something?
Yeah, Dave was talking about how much it costs to have a drive recovered. I had a problem a couple of years ago. There's a place in, I believe it's still Southfield,
Yeah, it's still there.
8 Mile, in an industrial
Can you put that on the IPPS?
Yeah, we'll get that posted
Yeah,
up
let's
there.
get that
'cause
posted
I
up
don't
on
know if
there. That would be helpful.
Yeah. I've normally used OnTrack out of Minnesota. My last recovery job I did for a guy, he was an architect, was working on a project that was $6 million building he was designing. And he called me and says, hey, my laptop's ticking and I can't seem to get it to boot. And I went over with a drive in my hand and got there and I got ready to take it apart and put the new drive in, got it all set and stuff like that. I said, where's your backup at? He goes like, what is a backup? I said, how important was the data on the drive? The guy says, you know, I was working this project, I got to present it in 3 weeks and I've been working on it for 4 months. I said, okay. And I made a phone call out to Minnesota and this is on a Friday. And they said, if you get it out to the airport, there's a guy coming back that works for our company. You can hand it to him. He'll get it out here. We'll work over it over the weekend. They charged me $4,000 to pull back 30 gigs of data. And I went to the guy and I said, this is what it's going to cost. He goes like, do it. Got it all done. It came back Sunday night. I picked it up at the airport, took it back, transferred the data back on his laptop, got it back to him, and he wrote out the check for $6,200. So,
Said thank you.
yeah. And guess what? He has backup drives on a regular basis now. Drives that only cost about $150. So think about it. If it's not important to you, don't worry about it. I'm going to close up with this. I'll get your one last questions. But I'm going to close up with this. Whenever people constantly will come to me because they know I'm in the computer industry and they'll say, you know, I want to buy a computer, you know, how much should I spend, this sort of thing. And I always say, if you want to buy like a Mac for $2,000, that Mac's actually going to cost you about $2,600. They're like, no, it only says $2,000. I said, you have to buy 2 hard drives to go with it because you got to back them up. And you can't back up with one, you need 2 for a couple of reasons. One, for the reason he was talking about, you need to rotate them so you can keep them spinning every now and then. Second, if you have a second one, if the first one died, you got a second chance. So always budget for 2, not 1.
Don't scrimp.
You play it cheap, you'll pay it later. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question, what hard drives do you recommend as a quality hard drives to buy? Anyone you would say that you should stick away from, or just ones that are superior when it comes to quality hard drives?
I usually stick, my own preference is to stick with the ones that have been around for a while, either Western Digital, Seagate, Toshiba is good, and Hitachi. Those 4 are the ones that I've had great success with, as far as this sort of thing. And those are also the 4 brands that you'll probably find in your major laptops and computers. Mr. Cutler.
Yeah, you have to be a little careful because Seagate put out some 1.5 terabyte drives that were terrible. And they wonderful failure rate on them. So check the blogs and such and just try to get a feel for what the failure rate is. The large Seagate drives, I don't have any problem with. I use I think all 4, yeah. I've got all 4 that you mentioned. I've been through close to 100 hard drives in the last few years. And starting from small ones and going to bigger ones later. And it was the Seagate 1.5 terabyte was the only one I really had a large problem with. The 3 was...
That's true of just about every brand though. I mean,
Yes.
Hitachi had a reputation for a short time with some bad drives. They sold IBM a whole huge batch of Death Star drives, which everybody named Death Star drives because they all failed so miserably. But so many of the other drives are great. So, like Jim said, you have to look up the drive you're looking for and check the reputation of that particular drive if you're really worried.
Exactly.
The young lady over there is patiently waiting.
Okay, so let's do the patiently waiting young lady.
Actually, I have 2 questions. Wait.
Question 1.
Okay. Question 1 is when you take that time machine back up and you put it on the shelf like we were talking about before, and then you try to start a new drive, it says, do you want to continue the old drive or start the new one? Do you you have to say, keep the old drive so that if you hook it back up, it'll recognize it or not?
No. If you say keep the old drive, what it'll do is it'll continue to use it as a time machine backup drive. So when you plug it in again, it'll try to do another backup. But if it's almost full, it won't be able to, and you'll get an error message.
Okay, so you would say start a new one.
I would start with new.
Okay, but you can still connect the old one.
Correct.
Question two?
Question two was sort of about the drives, like Gail was asking. But it used to be when you bought an external hard drive, you had to make sure it was compatible with the Mac as opposed to a PC type.
True.
Do we have to worry about that now?
Yes.
We do, when you buy it, you have to make sure the.
If you buy a drive at an Apple store, the ones that they sell there are pre-formatted to just plug and play with your Mac. If you go to Costco and pick up their hard drive of the week special, it's going to be PC formatted. It's very easy to just reformat it. You do that through the disk utility program in your computer already. You just see it and you just change it to a Mac partition instead of the PC partition. It'll take,
Good scheme too.
yeah, and it'll only take a few seconds to do.
So you really could buy any extra.
Journal is
drive
good.
at the price that you find.
Yeah, I always tell people buy name brand and feel free to look at the reviews first. I personally use LaCie hard drives because I'm just in love with them. I've been LaCie or Lacey, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I've been burned by Western Digital more times than I care. But again, every manufacturer has had a bad batch of drives. So.
Yeah, I want to elaborate on that a little bit. You heard Calvin say, use two backups. And now you just heard us talk about one reason for more than one backup drive, because you can have one Seagate and one Western Digital. And the chances of them both having the same failure mode is very small since they come from radically different production lines. So you get some diverse redundancy that way. The other thing is Calvin, I have to one-up you because I believe that you should have two rotating clones, but you should have at least one time machine backup for that oh shit moment when you delete a file that you didn't mean to delete. And you have that there all the time. And it also works for long term as well. I mean, I've restored years worth of mail from Time Machine. But that gets me up to 3 drives, but it's still on the order of $600 additional.
Yeah. Do what's appropriate for you. We're going to do Mike, and I see 2 more, and then we're going to have to move over to Dave. So go ahead, Mike.
When you get a drive, say from Costco, and you have to reformat it for the Macintosh, there are a couple of ways that you can reformat it.
Correct.
Could you please discuss that? What are the options and which way is better, etc.?
So typically when someone has an external hard drive that they bought anywhere else but an Apple store because it's PC formatted, plug it in, you plug the drive into the computer, you would open your app utilities folder and go to disk utility. And once you've gone into disk utility, boom. So then you've got it showing up there. The hard drive will be showing up. I'm going to speak loudly. So, this is the internal hard drive up top. Your external hard drive will show up below. You want to click on the top portion of it because that's the overall drive. And then you would choose, since this is on a fan, you would choose erase. When you choose erase, it's going to ask you what kind of partition you want to change it to. I like to use the Mac Extended Journal. That's what I always use. It works the best. Now, a lot of times with Time Machine, when you plug a hard drive in, it'll recognize, hey, this is a brand new hard drive. Do you want to use this for Time Machine backups? And if you click yes, it's supposed to walk you through this and partition the drive for you, so it'll do it automatically. I use the word supposed to. You can try it, and if it does it, life's good, cool. If it doesn't, because some hard drive manufacturers format their drive in a slightly weird way, then disk utility is your best option to then set it up correctly. Once it's set up correctly, after you've done run this, you get a pop-up on your screen, hey, see this hard drive's in, you wanna use your time machine backup? And you click yes. And then it will start a 2-minute countdown. And at that point in time, it will then start back preparing the backup. It'll look at everything on your drive. And then it'll back it up. Depending on how much data you have, depends on how long it will take. If you have a 500 gig hard drive and you've got 150 gigs of data on there, it's going to take about an hour, hour and a half. Also depending on the speed of that drive. If it's USB-C or USB 3, hour and a half, 2 hours. If it's Thunderbolt, probably an hour. If you have more data on that, then just put more time to it. The computer needs to be awake while it's doing it. So do not close the lid on your laptop while you're letting a time machine backup go, because when it goes to sleep, it stops. So leave it open, let it do its thing. If it's an iMac, hey, no big deal. It's on. Just leave it there. It won't go to sleep because it'll register that there's activity going on, and it will continue to make that backup for you. Okay?
The second one, if we want to do a, what did you call that? Time machine. Can I plug it in and have my second one the same way? Will it do
Yes. Yeah. When you plug in a new hard drive, it's going to recognize that it's brand new, and it's going to ask you.
So it'll do
If it's a drive, yeah, you can do as many drives as you want.
Simultaneously?
Not simultaneously, one at a time.
So there's no backup for the time machine hard drive? Because you said 2.
So you have 2 hard drives. You make one backup with Time Machine, then you take your second hard drive, plug it in, and you go through the same steps again. Then you have 2 backups. As Calvin said, you take that one hard drive, take hard drive 2, plug it in, do your Time Machine backup, then take that hard drive and do that. That's work, that's your house. Your house burns down, tornado comes through, earthquake. This one with my computer is gone. What do I do?
I understand.
Terry White always said he would take a drive to the bank. His theory was safety deposit boxes are in a vault. If a tornado comes through, what's still standing? The vault.
Then he backed down from that because he said after a while he got lazy.
Right, so I use his theory.
The bank's closed on Sunday.
Right, so my theory is even better. My theory is I have 2 hard drives, like Calvin recommended, like Terry recommended. One hard drive is at my parents' house. My dad has a gun safe down in the basement. I know right where that is. If his house burns down, I know where to dig. I know what corner to dig to get to it. And since it's a gun safe and it's heavy as hell, I know if there's a fire, everything inside there is going to be okay. So I've got one hard drive at home, and I've got one hard drive there. I take that one hard drive, I go to the computers in the house, back everything up on it. Drive over to my parents, have dinner, free, yes. And then I swap drives. Then I go back home. And I take that drive and I go around all the machines again, and I do another backup. I do that every month. I have a time capsule. The only thing the time capsule backs up is my wife's computer, because I am not a stupid man. Her stuff is very important. My stuff, it'll be my problem. But I back up 5 computers to that external drive that I swap out every month.
So the time machine hard drive can be one drive.
Yep.
Crash plan is the other hard drive.
And you can do that if you want to do that as well.
So that's an alternative to
Yep.
2, is what you're saying.
Sure, you can do it that way.
Alternative.
But realize that you have a time factor that you're going to be dealing with the online backup. Right here?
Yeah, quickly, Dave, what's the difference between the 2 icons for the drive and for the corner?
Okay.
You always have to select the
So-
one or
The bottom, where it says Calvin's MacBook, that's the volume of the drive the operating system lives on. Which, in Calvin's case, is the entire drive that's up top. But if you were to partition that drive so you had an older operating system and a current operating system, or a Windows partition set up on there, you would see 3 sub-volumes. And those are the volumes where each additional operating system would live.
Here's an example. I'm going to take, am I cutting too much on
No.
your time? Okay. All right.
This is really good.
So you went out and you bought a hard drive from Costco. Got it. You get a little docking station like this, for example, put it in. and you wait. You're gonna see it mount up there on the screen.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Oh, yes, I should. Okay, so you'll see it mount up on the screen eventually here. Stand by, sooner or later. Hello?
It takes,
Yeah. Okay, so down here it's mounted, but I want to see it up here in disk utility.
You saw it earlier.
Yeah, so I'm going to quit utility and just start it up again. So once again, just like Dave says, you go to Applications, Utilities, select Disk Utility. Okay, so now you see here's that other drive I bought. And this is a Windows formatted drive. Makes it even more fun. So now I want to use it on a Mac. And
before you erase that, would you point out how you know it's a Windows drive there for download?
yeah, if I click on Untitled here, let's see, where was that at?
You have to.
Oh, no, here it is, yeah. If I click on Untitled, see it says External Physical Volume Windows in TFS. Right there.
Is it GUID format or is it MBR?
It's NTF.
That's on your first.
It's in TFS.
Your first screen, your physical volume. Yeah, down the bottom. Partition map, does it say somewhere there?
It's a master boot record.
Yeah, that's Windows.
Okay, all right.
That's what needs to say GUID, and that's what Apple will do for you, but if you try to use that for a time machine drive as it is, time machine sometimes gets very confused.
Okay, so I wouldn't even try to use a Windows formatted drive as time machine. I would put it in there, and if I was all set to do that, I would come up here and I would click Erase. And it says, hey, what do you want to name it? I want to call it, just for the heck of it. And I believe Dave says do an extended journal. I mean, do a journal one, okay? And which is this one right here, which is normally defaults to. And he was talking about the GUID or GUID on there. So that's one that it defaults to as well. Click Erase. It goes ahead and it starts to do the erase, if you'd like to see the details of that, because it's really thrilling. And then it should, if I may not have it turned on my machine, but it should automatically, first thing it's going to do is go like, huh, look, it's a blank drive. Do you want to make this a time machine drive? And at that time you can say yes, and it'll start making it a time machine drive and start the backup process using the defaults. Or you could say, no, don't use it as a time machine drive because I'm going to do something else with it, and it'll just leave it alone.
We're about to decide later.
So decide later will let you decide if you want to use it for time machine or not later on. Next time you plug it in, it'll ask you again. And above that was a little checkbox that said Encrypt Backup. So if you want your backup encrypted, you check that box and it encrypts your time machine backup for you. So it'll make you create a password.
Never forget.
That you better not ever forget.
Now, a long time ago, when you used to do file vault encryption, I don't know if they still do it. If you encrypt something with file vault, it will say, hey, would you like to send the key to Apple? And Apple would store that encryption key for you, and if you forgot it, you could get it back from them. I don't know if they still do that.
I don't think we do that anymore.
I saw a recent article regarding that wanted to tamper with backdoors for Apple. Don't bother, and the encryption is pretty solid and heavy duty. Serious.
Yes.
Glasses, this is going to be the last, he was first, and then you're going to be the last question. Go.
Yeah, when you're storing these on the shelf, does it make a difference whether you do them vertical or horizontal?
What is your personal preference?
It really
would be the best way to do it.
And the reason why it doesn't matter is because if you look at a laptop, are you horizontal or vertical? You normally don't put your laptop away like this unless it's in a bag.
Right. But if your iMac, you drive sitting. I had to do that.
You are correct. Okay, last question from this young lady.
So if you have a large external hard drive, can you partition it into, say, two, and could you have a bootable disk on each partition?
Why, yes, you could.
You can.
Yes, you can go into utilities. I'll do that real quick for you.
You have different operating systems in those two.
Correct. And you can set one up for PC and one up for Mac. So if you can make as many partitions as it will allow you.
You would go back to that external drive at the drive level, not at the volume level. That's the volume. This is the actual drive. And you'd say, and see now, if you're at this level, the partition button is grayed out. If you go at the drive level, now you can do partitions. Select that. You can come in here and make whatever size partitions you want. So you say, okay, I want a partition that's 200 gig. And you hit the plus button, now you have a 200 gig partition. And then you could say, now I want another gig, partition in here. Let's say that'd be a 25, just for fun of it. So now you'll be making multiple partitions. Once you do that, you'll say apply.
What happened to the first partition?
That is set up as,
Like the pie went from this big to that big.
Because I made it's a 250 gig drive, and the first partition was 200 gig, so it took that big chunk of pie, and then I said make another one that's 35 gig, and it took another chunk of that pie and left that little piece of blue was what I didn't use.
so you'll have 3 partitions now.
You haven't formatted the partitions yet.
It will format the partitions, it will create the partitions and then format them at whatever format selection I would have picked at that time. I think I defaulted to the Apple one at that time.
But if you wanted to do one partition for Windows,
Right.
I could have made it MS-DOS, extended FAT, or NTFS if you have the extension on your machine to format NTFS drives.
So now you see that he has 3 partitions.
yeah.
So if he clicks on each one, it tells you at the top how big each one is. And then just under 25 on the last
So
one.
he could reformat one either now.
Yeah, you could go back in and you could pick one, and you could go and change it.
Well,
Right, because if there's something on it, it will erase it.
Right.
What's the difference between those 3 Windows drives, the 3 formats? NTSC or?
NTFS is the current formatting system that they use on Windows for their drives. Extended FAT was back in the days of Windows 95 through Vista, and MS-DOS was prior to Windows 95. Yeah.
Point about the Windows, are there a bunch of things now I've been seeing that they don't support anymore?
Well, that would be a Windows conversation.
Yeah.
Welcome to MacGroup Detroit.
All right. Last question, seriously, and this is the
Way
gentleman
back.
with the hat in the back, because he's been had it up for a long time.
So we have an external hard drive in partition, and one half is your time machine,
Yep.
and the other half is for a file or whatever. The time machine won't back up that other partition, correct? It's only backing up the, what's on. the
It should
computer,
only
what's
be
on both
backing
sides.
up the computer that you have.
Right.
You can actually have Time Machine back up an external drive that's plugged into the computer. So technically you could say, yes, I want to back up that other half. I don't know why you would want, I don't know why you would want to do that. But I mean, technically you could do that. I've had people come in saying, my iTunes library is way too big for my MacBook Air. I've got 300 gigs worth of movies and music. I have a 128 gig flash drive in this thing. What do I do? So we tell them, we take an external drive,